Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third knowledge session organized as a part of Praja 22-23. It is lovely to see all the young people from across the length and breadth of the country on the call. I am Mayura, and on behalf of the National Institute of Urban Affairs and Praja Foundation, I extend a very warm welcome to all our participants and our esteemed guest speakers. As an update on the ongoing Prajatantra, we had around 1,000 young participants with us in the quarterfinal round, which was conducted last month. And they were representing 79 cities from 23 states and 5 union territories. I would like to take a moment here to congratulate everyone who participated in the competitions with such enthusiasm, and also to all the young members who have qualified for the semi-finals that will take place tomorrow and the day after. We wish you all the very best. Before I introduce the speakers, let me just take a moment to spell out the ground rules for the session. Please put any questions that you may have in the chat box or the Q&A box, and our speakers shall try and answer most of them. For the participants who have not been able to join due to the limit of the Zoom meeting, this session is also live streamed on Praja Foundation's Facebook page and NIUA's YouTube channel. It gives me great pleasure to introduce today's speakers. We have Mr. Kunal Kumar, who is the Joint Secretary at the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, and also the Mission Director of the Smart Cities Mission. Previously, he has held the offices of Municipal Commissioner at Pune and Kolhapur Municipal Corporation, and that of a District Collector in several districts of Maharashtra. He has presented several papers on e-governance, which received awards and citations, such as the National Award for the Best E-Governed District Award for Jalgaon District. He was also awarded by the Prime Minister of India for excellence in the Aadhaar Governance Award during his stint as the District Collector of Aurangabad. A very warm welcome, sir. Joining him, we have Manpreet Singh, who is the Chief Program Officer at the National Urban Digital Mission, hosted by NIUA. He has over 20 years of experience in government policy formulation and advisory, transformational governance reforms, and online citizen service delivery. A very warm welcome, Manpreet, and I hand over the floor to you.
Thanks, Mayura, and welcome all the participants. Good evening all. And we have with us Mr. Kunal Kumar, who heads the Smart Cities Mission, and I work day in, day out with him on National Urban Digital Mission, and we only talk about e-governance. How do we bring e-governance? Typically, our scope is more of urban e-governance, but we'll talk in general today about e-governance. So over to you on in general. How has been your experience, Kunal sir, on e-governance landscape in the last 22 years of your service, and how do you see going forward the e-governance part of it? Then we can we'll deliberate further on that.
So, it's a very fascinating topic, e-governance. And I have seen over the past 2 decades of my own administrative experience how, different kinds of experiments have happened under the garb of e-governance. So first of all, Manpreet, thank you for that introduction. And also, I'm indeed very delighted to be part of this discussion with such great people on this wonderful Friday evening. So let me keep it short in the beginning so that I can accommodate as many interactive questions and discussion as much as possible. I think all of us have to realize that there is probably time for everything. Things evolve on the back of things that happened in the past. It's nothing that is new. So maybe when the first versions of e-governance were making inroads in the early 2000s, late 90s. At that moment, what we were seeing is this intersection of something that is called new public management. This is a term which was coined in the last few decades of, especially in the 1980s with Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher becoming their respective heads of state. Then this whole idea of government becoming thin, minimum government, maximum governance came in. And so government to actually rule, through new age instruments. And then subsequently, we also saw the rise of the internet, rise of the world of software, the rise of Apples and Googles and Microsofts. And then suddenly you see both new public management and technology of the time converge to create this entity, what is now broadly mentioned as e-governance. And by the way, if you look at e-governance, it's basically a conjointed term between e and governance. And I can tell you with all my experience and my, the what I've seen in this e-governance, I think governance is much more important than the e, and that is something that we forget. What does that translate into? If you are trying to change something, you genuinely want to make services and your experience for people better with government, it will not only happen by putting computers and software and creating a system which will, become a bridge between the government and the citizen. You actually would need to change the routine of governance, to change business processes, to look at, inculcation of soft elements to improve human resources, to improve skills, to change the way you function for e-governance to succeed. So e cannot just become a wrapper on top of governance and become something magical overnight. Governance itself has to improve for e-governance to also succeed. Secondly, e-governance normally gets associated only with online services. We say e-governance in urban areas means that we have online certificates, means we can pay our tax online, means we can reach our government for any of our complaints online and get redressal. This is a very micro view of e-governance. E-governance actually is a very broad term where this confluence of technology and new public management has to be looked at in many, many different ways. E-governance can actually also mean using technology to improve efficiency of governance. Let's say if you are able to use technology to reduce your fleet or to reduce the mileage that your solid waste management vehicles cover by say 50%, then you would have saved crores of rupees, which would have gone into petrol and diesel. Or by using on technological systems to work on your street lights, you could better manage them, so you could reduce the cost of energy that goes in managing your systems. You could use technology to improve public transportation in such a way that technology can give you inputs into where gaps are, therefore you can increase access to people there, and also you can plan and schedule your movement in a much better way. And there are n number of reasons. You want to solve the problems of pollution, you want to solve the problems of transportation, you want to solve the problems of water, sanitation, security, housing. Everything has an intersection with technology, and therefore e-governance merely in the shape of online services is a very micro view. It's a very important view because many people, for example, if I have to look at when I have accessed my municipal government, I may have only to pay my property tax, to pay my water bill, to raise a complaint. That's fine. But if you look at the systemic view of cities, but if I have a complaint, you can resolve it through e-governance, but there could be a systemic issue why that complaint is happening. And to fix systemic issues, technology also is needed in a much broader way. So for example, I am complaining all the time that my water doesn't come in my house. You can solve that by either saying that, well, it will come tomorrow, or maybe there was a fault. But systemic solution would be that that fault never occurs in the future. So I don't need to use your very efficient and sophisticated and very beautiful citizens grievance redressal system. So technology is to be looked at in a much broader, so e-governance has to be looked at in much broader ways. And as has been the evolution, for example, we say industrial revolution 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Similarly, I think in e-governance, we've got through many phases. The first phase was when the computer first landed on the table of a government office. I think at that time, the debates were like, this is going to kill employment, this is going to end our lives, ruin our lives. We've got the greatest competitor on earth sitting on our own table. And from that moment, from using DOS and using basic floppy disk and only using it for creating some letters and some basic office work, we moved to e-governance 2, where standalone software services started to get implemented. So from only doing desktop work, backend work in offices, we moved to actually providing standalone services. A standalone service could be, providing a mutation or something. When someone comes to our office, they can actually provide that mutation as a service. And the mutation software will, by the way, not speak to something else, other software, let's say a complaint software. They are all standalone softwares. Then the third revolution, I think, could be towards moving towards integrated platform-based approaches. So, which is what we are currently seeing. If you see, so many of these, for example, UPI is an example of a platform. What we are trying to do under the National Urban Digital Mission with the OPO platform is a type of platform where you get into microservices, you get into aggregation both at the producer side as well as the consumer side, and everybody can find different meaning on the platform. And by the way, this is a this is the buzzword. The platformization also is a word which is now used. And the fourth e-governance layer could be this proactive e-governance, where because of the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning and stuff like that, you will be actually able to predict what people need and therefore be able to solve it much before time. Instead of so that is inroads into actually personalized attention to citizens. So from back-end work from the times of DOS to floppy disks and so on and so forth to actual standalone services, and then to move point, it was not online. Literally, you had to come to a center, to a third stage where we have, maybe there would have been a 3.5 stage where you have different services more efficient, and the fourth stage is this platformization stage, and then now the fifth stage, which is probably in some places is more proactive governance, where you actually predict and preempt what the citizen is going to ask. Now there is a approach which I think two fundamental things I think which any government needs to take into account when they talk about e-governance. I think if you really want to make a dent in providing ease of living, see, ultimately outcomes are important. E-governance is a means to improve the quality of access, efficiency, and quality of government services, and in this case, in urban areas. So if you want to do that, then you have to have basically a triangular approach, three nodes. One is you provide these online services in a very easy to access, simplified manner. The second is that you also need to, as a city, invest in, or through partnerships, make an attempt to increase digital literacy in society. Because if people are not savvy enough to be able to access the service you are providing, to be able to work on the service you are providing, then there will be a digital divide. When some people are able to use your services and some are not being able to use your services, because so I don't know how many cities are doing that, but it's easy, because if you see the National Digital India Mission, it provides for a beautiful 20-hour curriculum, which can be actually it can be a peer-to-peer thing. So all the great people on the call can actually decide, well, I will make two people or one person at least digitally literate. So you could administer this course to someone, and then a certificate is given, and that person, it's basic knowledge. Fear has to go away. And then, the second thing is, so the first thing is efficient online services. Second thing is literacy, and the third thing is access. So even if you are literate to be able to, access online services, but you don't have access, which means either you don't have broadband, you are not able to pay internet costs, or you're not having access to any public Wi-Fi. So you will not be able to, access online services. So this triangle always has to work in a city. People have to be sufficiently digitally literate to avoid the digital divide. There has to be online services of a proper kind, and there has to be access mechanisms of various ways to be able to reach the services to people. Then there is a second triangle also, which we call the people process platform triangle, where a city needs to invest in good quality human resources, build teams, people, technical prowess has to be there. And it's not only about technology, but it's also about having the right people who can communicate with citizens and the community, who can translate their feedback and their asks into what technology delivers. So technology is not for the sake of itself. It is for solving a problem or to address a situation. But who brings that to knowledge? So it comes from the community. It is basically that you need people who can bridge that. So you have to invest in people. Then you need to invest in processes. So as I said, business process reengineering is one aspect. Having policies on how you'll manage data, having policies on how different government departments will interact. Let's say it is a building permission case where 7 different departments have to give NOCs before a certificate or approval can be issued. So those 7 departments have to find a way of mechanism of interacting, and therefore the software will only ride on top of that interactive methodology. So processes have to be put in place. And the third thing is platforms. Now you can talk of platforms broadly. We say platform or the technology or the vehicle by which this service will be delivered. So you have to invest in people, you have to invest in those vehicles or platforms for which these services will be delivered, and you also have to build processes. So these two triangles are always in my mind when I think about technology. And if I talk about the smart cities mission, I think uh, probably before this, there was hardly any work on technology which was happening in smaller cities. In many cities, there is a bunch of cities which have already done something. But as I said, they were mostly standalone things. Hardly any platform approach has even emerged even today. I think the smart cities mission brought in that concept. It is also started infusing a lot of technology in management of cities through the ICCCs. The data smart cities work that has happened under the smart cities has successfully, at least in these 100 cities, built data teams, appointed city data officers. They've all got their city data policies. All of them are starting to put data online in the open data portal. People are working on the urban data exchange to provide a secure conduit for data transfer between public and private entities. There's a whole lot of work that has happened, and now with the extension of the National Urban Digital Mission to all the states, which we are now in the process of. So we've actually signed MOUs with around more than half the states of the country. Others are in the pipeline. So all the states and union territories are now committing to adopt the National Urban Digital Mission model to implement e-governance, and hopefully over the next 5 years, if all goes well and we are able to do well, all the states and cities in the country, all the cities and towns in all the states and UTs in the country should be able to provide a basic level of 6 to 9 services online in a good quality manner to all their citizens, which is where Manpreet is also coming and he's working with us. And there's a big team which is working with us here. And at the end of the day, there is a lot of planning that is required. There's a lot of hard work that is required if you want to do it in a very systematic manner. Otherwise, if you just go ahead and buy some software and then subsequently you don't even have maintenance cost to maintain that software, or maybe you even don't have recurring maintenance done either by the same people, and then you have vendor lock-ins, you don't get much distance. So we have to do it in a systematic manner. You have to do in a manner where there is longevity, the sustainable solutions are found, and there is agility in the software that you build, which is where the platform approach is very important. And you are able to create a structure where federated units like states and cities can actually innovate on top of. So you created a basic layer, and on that top, all the states and cities can actually customize the software and customize the applications based on their needs. So that is where we are currently, and there is a lot of good work that is happening in e-governance across the country. Many government departments are moving towards online services. But as I said, we have to be holistic in our approach, and that is being seen in many of these implementations. You've seen what NHA is doing, the National Health Authority is doing. You've seen what some bits of it is happening in agriculture, some of it is happening. GST is a classical example of how e-governance has brought together a lot of work. So GST is a huge network, and all of that is electronically. What better to talk about than Arogya Setu and all the the COVID application and all that was done to manage the COVID pandemic. So great work is happening. We are all learning from each other, and hopefully we will be able to create much better services going forward. So I'll stop here. I wanted to be short, and then maybe open up to discussion or open up to questions and discussion. Thank you.
Right. So it was a wonderful way of describing e-governance with your experience, sir. And I would sum it up. Typically, 3 objectives you talked about. E-governance is not only about it's about governance. If I talk about final objectives, ease of living is one of the objectives. to our audience in a very simplified manner, it can be you can get an income certificate without any Patwari verification. That's something on an ease of living. You can get your birth certificate directly from a private hospital. That's ease of living. Third part is if for an old age pension, any person who's getting 60 years of age, he doesn't have to apply for an old age pension. You have his age record, you have his in every record. Why doesn't he get his certificate at his own? Why does he need to apply for it? That's ease of living. Second pillar we talked about was ease of doing business. Somebody wants to set up a trade license. Why does he need to submit 10 documents for putting up his trade license or getting his trade license? Why doesn't he get a deemed certificate on day one? Why does he need to have a government interface in process of inspection in setting up ease of doing business? Third part is the government efficiency. How do we increase? We have seen, sir, property tax collections are 0.2% of GDP in India. If you look at developed nations, they are like 6% of GDP is property tax. And why can't we use E as part of our government efficiency building? So these are three typical, objectives. Now coming back to some pillars, you talked about process, people, tech, the data part. Data part I've seen very close to your heart, especially when you talk always about dashboard. You talk about not only quantitative SLAs, but also the feedback loop around those quantitative, how good was the quality of service delivery. So we want to understand from your side the data part of it, plus the challenges around capacity, process, and typically these pillars are something around these pillars. How have you shaped up on the data part and the challenges around these three pillars? So you're on mute.
Do you want me to go ahead on that, or should we open up to discussion and then we come back to this question? I would like to get the participants in. I can see 2-3 questions on the answer box. So let me take them first. And then if there is any other person who wants to ask questions, feel free to put more questions there. The first question that I can read here is, are the smart cities development can break the ecosystem chain? Honestly, I didn't understand this question. Are the smart cities development can break the ecosystem chain? So whoever has asked this question, can you make it simpler for me to understand? It's very complex for me to understand. Then the second question is Shahis Sharma, who's saying that, so what are the key services we can cover under eGov for the development of a city? Like what about the sanitation or cleanliness? So look, there are citizen services as part of sanitation and cleanliness. For example, you have to provide doorstep solution for pickup of garbage. So let's say you have a QR code at your home, and a garbage van comes there. He has to access that QR code to be able to prove that the guy had picked up the waste, and then it is also recorded how much of waste was coming from you. If they have a methodology, so each of the people can be actually each of the people can know, and there could be trends which are analyzed for what waste is going to come and how much waste is coming every day, and so on and so forth. That is there. Plus about sanitation and water supply, you can actually give water connections, sanitation connections, sewage connections using GIS and e-governance solutions. And there are so many services. You can name the service. By the way, you can give certificates. So it could be birth certificates, death certificates. It could be any other kind of certificates. It could be payment of any kind of fee or license fee, whether it is a market fee with any other fees for fines that have to be paid in a city. You could pay your property tax. You could pay other different taxes online. You could also use for, as I said, permissions. So it is whether it is a building permission or a permission to set up a shop, or to permission to whatever land or whatever is development of land that needs to be done. You can actually monitor your projects online. You could have drone-based monitoring of projects. You can actually see live, sitting in the office of a municipal commissioner or a city manager. You can see live all your projects happening because they're directly streaming into your computer. You can see it on a dashboard. And of course, you could have grievance redressal systems for people to get solutions to, and proper escalation systems so that people feel accountable in the system. And then you can use technology to also deploy human resources to do predictive modelings about how things will pan out. A lot of these cities which were managing COVID and that. So you can go on and on. This is a discussion for hours together. How many services and different kinds of things you can do. Then Lekhni Raja is asking, sir, what do you feel? How can youth work towards eGov and bridge the gap that we see? I think fundamentally a lot of opportunity is going to come in the urban sector in the next 2 decades. If you see, India today is about 400 crore people living in urban areas, so 40 crore people, sorry. And that is likely to go up to 80 crores over the next 2 decades. So huge amount of urban influx is going to happen. And a lot of that influx will cause a pressure on infrastructure, will cause a pressure on climate, on air pollution, on traffic congestion, on health, on environment, on water, sanitation, everywhere. And plus they will demand services. So it's an amazing opportunity. So I would recommend youth to actually seriously take up uh, courses like urban planning, train themselves in urban management, look at studying the intersection of urban and data and technology, look at becoming experts in transportation systems, look at housing markets. You can look at the political economy of land. You could look at urban economics. So these are areas where, not specifically directly, because as I said, eGov is not a standalone entity. Just like electricity. Well, electricity is used even in your house, it's in your car to charge your car, it's there at your building, anywhere you go. Electricity is a horizontal thing. It cuts across everything, anything. For example, you were attending a call because we could charge our laptop or computer through electricity. So eGov pans across all these sectors. If you're trying to work in housing, you need to have e-governance. If you're trying to work in urban transport, you need to know e-governance, work on e-governance. You may not be actually working on yourself, but you will have to work on with teams which know the technology behind those systems. So invest in knowing that. I mean, that's a great area of opportunity that is going to emerge, and probably thousands and lakhs of youth will be required to join the Indian urban governance ecosystem. And as we speak, there is a good move to actually, there's a lot of thought going in as to how more urban professionals can be excited and to join the system. So how do we create better incentive structures to people for youth to be able to join? Then there is a question
talk about the Smart City Fellow and Indian Fellow on the question.
Yeah, so within the government programs, especially like programs like ours, we've created this a group called the Smart Cities Fellows. That's opportunity that we have created. So thousands of applications come in every year, and 40 to 60 people join us as Smart City Fellows. We actually work on a lot of digital technology-based solutions, and they develop original solutions with their own experience as they work in cities. So that's a very beautiful model that has been developed. You can see it on our website. Then also there's this concept of TULIP, the Urban Learning Internship Program. And I would urge people like you to look at going on the TULIP portal. It's very easily accessible. You can type TULIP MOUA, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs will get to that portal. And you can actually log in as a prospective student who wants to do this internship, and you'll get a offer, or you'll get an opportunity from various either smart cities or urban local bodies. So we're trying to create youth connect, and this is not only being done by the mission. Smart cities at their own level are also doing it. State governments are also doing it. So youth is a very important area of focus in all these programs. Now the next one is RN Gautam, who is asking how should developing country look at e-governance, as right now most of the e-governance related technological development is done by developed nations, and what can developing nations learn from it? What are their challenges and how should we be ready for it? Well, I think at the level of technology, there is not much difference between a developed and a developing country at the moment. If you look at UPI in our country, hardly any country in the world can match the beautiful concept that it is. And that is the kind of technology that will succeed in developing countries. You look, I'll give you a funny example. I was like walking on the road, wanted to buy Nariyal Pani. Went to that guy, said, he said, "ठीक है, मेरे पास पैसा नहीं है." I said, "I'll pass it on. Google Pay है, कोई phone pay है, उसके पास वो भी नहीं था." So finally, a third person was also passing by. I said, "आपके पास Google Pay है." I gave him 50 rupees, and this guy gave 50 rupees to that guy. So we had a good UPI-based transaction among the three of us just because UPI existed. Now, you go to villages, people are using QR codes. I am surprised. You go to buy vegetable, वो उसको बोलो तो बोलेगा phone pay कर दो. So that is the kind of technology that we are developing. So our technology has to be easy to access, which has been proved by this one. Look at what has happened through COVID, how people have registered for vaccination, and how this Arogya Setu thing played out. This is not even available in developed countries. I was, for a brief while, when the COVID situation was bad, I was in the US, and I can tell you that people were getting tested 8 days later, and the test result was coming 8 days later, and some vaccination requests also were taking a huge amount of time. In our case, well, we were shouting at our government if it was coming about 2 hours late, but that is the situation in countries like US. Point I'm making is that technology itself is available now. Deploying it in the right ways, being innovative with it, creating proper test beds so that you are able to test out solutions which matter to you the most. We require solutions, and sometimes also taking this approach that best can be enemy of the good. So you have nothing, and you start talking about only having a chartered aircraft. You can first have a bicycle, then you can have a car, and then you can move them. So the point I'm making is that in e-governance, technology itself should not be the fact. What you are trying to achieve, as I said in the beginning, what you are trying to achieve and how it can be achieved in a doable way today can be upgraded tomorrow, and it can be done in a way which is very suitable to our context. That has to be seen. So the processes, hows of doing it is important. The technology itself is available. We have excellent talent in our country. Also, we need to create templates and toolkits, and we will be able to hasten. So somebody does something good, as a national government, as a state government, we should be able to collate that information, spread it to other people so that they can learn from it and do something faster. People should not be making the same mistakes again and again. We don't have that luxury of resources. So the sharing of ideas can happen, and we have to look at also open source deployment of in areas of criticality. So I think developing countries may, specifically today, I think India is really setting very high standards for many countries. And I would say reverse. Developed countries are now in a time has come that they should look at what countries like India is doing. The challenge with us is not in technology. The challenge with developing countries, and also the challenge with India, is the implementation, to get through the business processes, to actually break through the silos, to be able to change the efficacy of government itself, to be able to change the outlook of governments, to change from traditional ways of working to a new age of working. That is more important and more troublesome in a developing country, because systems develop over time, which is why it's a developing country. It's we are all said and done 75 years after independence, but our systems are evolving. Our urban governance is evolving. So E can only do that much, but governance has to improve. So I think the bigger problem is that, not the technology itself. Okay. Chinmay is asking, sir, I want insight on how land issues can be resolved by e-governance. Now, one of the things that is being talked about, I'll give you the more glamorous answer, which is blockchain. Now, you might have heard about blockchain, you might not have heard about blockchain, but probably it's the most old technology of ledger keeping. Look, in a land administration, in a state or in a city, either there is a tehsildar or a talati or a patwari, there is a building engineer, there is a mutation maybe at the revenue officer level or maybe the municipal level. So a system in blockchain can be developed where all land transactions can be actually ledgered on the blockchain. And each of these entities do not need to ask for repeated questions and repeated documents from the person. So suppose I have got a mutation with the revenue authority, but there is no record of that in the municipal authority. And the municipal authority, even if it records now my name on that property, the building permission department doesn't get access to it, which is where the building permission department, when I'm applying for a building, again is asking me to bring my revenue documents and my property documents and all that. All that can be removed if you're on a blockchain. Plus, it becomes a secure system, it becomes a transparent system. Everybody is on it. Everybody knows what transactions are happening. So duplication, cheating, wrong practices, malpractices, all that can be avoided. That's one part. Then all this, on land, we could actually do a very good GIS layering where all things that are associated with the land, whether you want to get water connection on the land, you want to see whether you want to get electricity connection, you want to get sewage connection, you want to see the history of that land, of who owned the land before and how it has been mutated to the current owner. All that is possible on GIS, and linking together all the data that is available with multiple different government departments. It can come in through APIs, so that when you want a complete profile of a land, it's almost like उसका पूरा vital statistics आपको मिल जाएगा. इस land का ये ownership था पिछले 50 साल में, इसके पास गया, इसके पास में ये वाटर लाइन जा रही है, अगर इसको वाटर कनेक्शन लेना है तो इतना खर्चा आएगा, सीवेज इतना आएगा, ये आएगा, उस तरह से कर सकते हैं. Plus, of course, regular issues about building permissions, land selling permissions, and all that is possible. You can see that land registration system in most states has now become very good. It is all electronically done. Even you, and in some states you need not be in your own city. You can do it from anywhere in the state or anywhere in the world. So a lot is happening on land administration. Plus, now drone technology is a very interesting thing. Drone technology is also helping us map land, create better land records, manage both congruence between the revenue record as well as the municipal record. In fact, 3D mapping has now come in, so you can actually take decisions about projects. If I have to build a road, if I have to build a lake, or to modify a lake, or maybe augment a lake, or you want to build something new like a bus route, you don't need to actually go to the site. You can actually simulate it on the 3D mapping, and you can do it. Plus, you might have heard about digital twins. You can actually mirror the entire city on a software. So you could actually see a virtual replica of your city. And when you put some building or some construction, some development on top of that, it can give you complete analysis. Ki ye building dalne se, this is the effect it will have on water supply. This is the amount of sewage it will release. This is the amount of pollution it can give to the system. This is the traffic density that will change in that location. This is the kind of infrastructure that is required. So before you've actually taken the decision and subsequently got in trouble, you could actually pre-decide everything and know about details about what you're going to decide and whether to take that decision is appropriate or not. So many things can be done on that. So if that is the last, okay, there are many other questions.
There are many other questions we can pick up.
How to deal with data privacy along with increasing e-governance, as India does not have a data privacy bill. So at the moment, we have focused more on non-personal data. We will, of course, not create our own data privacy bill. All departments cannot have their individual ones. We have to wait for the government of India thing. But yes, there are consent mechanisms which are there. There are mechanisms of using non-personal data in various ways. Look, I don't want to see whether X paid their property tax or Y paid their property tax. I can still see at an aggregate level how many people paid property tax. I can still, for every citizen feedback that is there, I can see how many citizens have given what kind of feedback for a system. So data can be used in many ways for public good without actually getting into privacy of people. I think that is the fine line at the moment that we all have to run with. And but we need a data privacy law for sure, because then otherwise, there's always this possibility of something going wrong here and there and some legal issues emerging. But at the moment, I don't think we have come into that trouble anytime, because at this moment there's a great need for solutions, and people, most of the solutions in the urban sector at the moment that we are working with are non-personal data, aggregate data. So, well, you can say that aggregate data also can be chiseled to get out private data and all, but let's not get into that argument at that moment. Then, when it comes to electronic form of governance, people in rural areas, this is Vidhi Sharma, are often very skeptical, since there's very less capacity building. How to make rural areas more receptive to technologically advanced solutions? Probably I answered that. No, so easy solutions. Look at QR code as an easy solution. You didn't go for NFC, you didn't go for this and that. You went for a simple solution. Today people are actually being able to access their bank on SMS. You don't even need a smartphone for making payments. So easy technology. Then of course, there is business models. So you will have to create business models where people in the same village can actually take leadership. So this has happened very beautifully in the citizen centers in many rural areas, where a volunteer or a young entrepreneur from the same village has set up a citizen service center, and most people can access citizen services at that center. So that person belongs to that city and therefore has an ownership, and therefore gradually can train other people to be able to access, and he has a business interest also. So uski bhi bhala ho jata hai, gaon ka bhi bhala ho jata hai. So I think those are issues, and as I said, functioning literacy, रूरल डिजिटल लिटरेसी पे काम करना चाहिए. अब तो भारत नेट से जो है हर गांव में, हर ग्राम पंचायत में वाईफाई सॉरी ब्रॉडबैंड पहुंच रहा है. उसका अगर पूरा नेटवर्क बन गया, तो आप सोचिए कि everyone in the villages will also be able to get easy access. So we are moving towards all that. Now in some e-governance systems, that's why Raju, we see automatic closing of complaint within its due time without complaints concern. How can we resolve this issue? This is interesting, and a short answer to this is that you can use artificial intelligence kind of systems. And by the way, when I say artificial intelligence, I'm not talking of rocket age. And artificial intelligence is not good enough old technology. You can actually use such systems to predict कौन से बंदे ऐसा कर रहे हैं system में, which areas are seeing most of this happening, and therefore they can be plugged out, and they can be they will know that they are being watched and they can be seen. The second thing is that there may be genuine issues, which is why the person has to is trying to do this. So maybe there is no water supply line there, and people may keep complaining about water supply. Obviously, the guy can't do anything because वो line ही नहीं है, तो पानी कहाँ से लाएगा? So he will keep saying, well, I have done this before, complaint close कर रहा है. So fundamental issues also need to be resolved. Third thing is good escalation mechanisms and continuous review and monitoring by the senior officers. So if you have a heat map of the city, you know which areas are giving you more complaints, where are the complaints getting closed, you can quickly diagnose what are the problems, and you could fix them. And most importantly, always have a closed loop with the citizen with a feedback mechanism. So even if the complaint has been closed, you have a feedback mechanism, and if there is a complaint closure and there is a feedback of red because it shows that the citizen is not happy, then those officers can be taken to task. So technology provides a lot of these solutions.
On the feedback part, there is a tech plugin from Mighty Government of India called Rapid Assessment System. It's a small plugin, gets attached to any application. Whenever a citizen application is closed, a message goes to that person with a link. In case the rating is poor, he can reopen the grievance also. That's a tech part of the loop closure.
चलो मैं अगले क्वेश्चन पे जाता हूँ. अभी RN Gautam is saying, what is the role of urban planners? The role of urban planners is like role of urban doctors. Just like doctors treat you, urban planners are supposed to treat all that can go wrong. So by the way, it's a different approach. So urban planners are not the ones who design cities. Doctors don't come and design your lives. They only come in when your life gets into trouble. So urban planners have to rule by exception. When I'm saying rule, it's not rule. Urban planners come in by exception. So in a city, it's people and markets which actually make cities work. But while they do so, they may not be efficient utilization of space. There will be low supply of social infrastructure. अगर सब market based ही होने लगा, तो school ही नहीं बना, hospital ही नहीं बना, roads नहीं बने, environmental degradation हो रहा है. So इन चीजों को रोकने के लिए urban planning की जरूरत है. तब वो डॉक्टर आता है और उसमें जो है ये टेम्पलेट बनाता है कि हाँ इस तरह से होना चाहिए. बाकी चीजों में एंटर नहीं करना. आज के दिन में अगर आप देखोगे अर्बन प्लानिंग में मोस्ट ऑफ द थिंग्स दैट वी डू आर अबाउट बिल्डिंग की हाइट कितनी होनी चाहिए, कमरा कितना बड़ा होना चाहिए, उसमें खिड़की कितनी बड़ी होनी चाहिए. आई थिंक वी शुड डू लेस ऑफ दैट एंड इंक्रीज मोर फोकस ऑन हाउ वी कैन सेव द एनवायरनमेंट, हाउ कैन द traffic congestion be resolved, more on the public realm instead of the private realm. So short answer to your question. Then Amar is saying, sir, how to make economically weaker people part of your governance system? Digital literacy, provide easy access, broadband, Wi-Fi, and also about the third thing is good online services, easily accessible online services like this QR code business or simple mobile apps or things which can work even with non-smartphones. So that is there. And then if an e-governance policy specifically focuses on a certain section of society in the city, what should be kept in mind while preparing the policy, and how shall the same impact the city with a policy in improving and providing private business services? The best thing is, when you start to look at a specific sector, look and first talk to those people. if you're trying to build a startup policy for a city, you should first start to talk to the startups in the city and ask them, bhai, tumko kya mushkil hoti? If you're putting up something for businesses, you ask them, what is it? You can do a sample survey across the city, do about 200, 500 people, set up a team, you can organize the team from the local college, get those people under tulip, train them, let them go to the businesses, ask them questions, get what the problem is, create a platform which solves those problems. So when you're doing specific problems, it's always good to start with those specific people, ask them, and then create a solution. And by the way, don't confuse between symptoms and actual problems. So sometimes when we talk about, I can give you a uh, it's like traffic congestion. It's there everywhere. You can see urban flooding. It's the case of Bangalore. You can see it in newspapers every day. Now, urban flooding is not the problem. It's a symptom of a problem which is bad, planning in the way the city has been laid out. Urban flooding is basically the symptom of that. So if you try to solve symptoms and leave the main problem alone, you will never be able to solve the problem. It's almost like having crocin and not taking antibiotic, तो वो कभी disease ठीक ही नहीं होगी. So I think this is where the real problems of people need to be looked at. It's not only about providing a building permission system, but it's also about sometimes the person will say, well, your law itself, if this changes, then probably everything will be sorted out. So maybe a e-governance system is not required. Just changing the law would have solved the problem for ease of doing business. That's the way to approach it. Then e-governance was introduced to make governance more transparent. How is citizen-oriented governance being ensured end to end? But I think all those things that I've talked about is pretty much this question's answer. What should be kept in mind? Lekni Raja says, when a policy on e-governance is framed, and what are the challenges faced while framing a policy? As I said, people part, process part, platform and tech part have to be looked at. Then you have to look at the choice architecture. You should be able to provide all modes of access, all channels of access, all time, anywhere, anytime, anywhere access. You should be able to prepare systems where you don't create vendor lock-ins. You have an open architecture. People can innovate on top of it, it has to be adaptive. So you build something, and tomorrow it is of no use. Then you should be able to modify it, and then you should be able to create public-private partnerships around it, so that tomorrow, if something new has to be done, then you can quickly do those things. So those are the broad elements.
I have a point here on the capacity part of it. So we have been to most of the states now, traveled and understood their e-governance. The government side capacity is also very, very poor, sir, when it comes to implementation capacity. And second part, on the institutionalization of the whole e-governance, that's also we saw as a missing link. So how do we work around government capacity building and institutionalizing whatever we are doing, we will do? So that's what.
Yeah, so government capacity building, we need to have most states have municipal cadre system, and they have recruitment rules. So infusion of good quality talent into cities is important. You cannot do this only by bridge consultants, where consultants come in for a short time. You need to augment capacity and also train them properly. And this has to be a concerted effort at the level of the state and the bigger cities, and there has to be this has to be a continuous effort. This is not a one-time effort of capacity building. So that's on that. Maybe I'm just a bit hurried, so maybe I miss out on some points. I'll take 2 or 3 more. Alok, the challenge between a developed and developing country is how one handles data and the privacy around that. Should integrate the issues of data privacy. I think I have answered part of that, so I'll skip that. So would it be risky if we try to centralize all services through a single app? Yes. It is risky. The entire management of the app itself, then you, over a period of time, risk redundancy. At the same time, you are stopping innovation on that app. So what do you want? Let's say you want people to be able to access the government, so that if they see kachra on the road, they can inform you and get it cleaned. You create an app and say, isi pe hoga. दूसरा बंदा कोई और टेक्नोलॉजी लगा के उससे बढ़िया कर सकता है, उसको आप रोक रहे हो. So let many apps come up, but the objective be solved at the end by an outcome which is what you desired. So never should you get into this business. You should basically prescribe standards. You can say that this is the way you have to, these are the standards that have to be followed, so that data can be the data coming from this app can be used by some other app, and which can create more complex services. Standards are good, but beyond standards, you should leave the mechanisms of creating that outcome can be left to many different players, and that is how best systems come out. If you go to a city abroad, you will see there are 10 different apps for accessing bus services. You can choose any, and you can actually get the bus service that you want. So how funding can be made over tier 3 cities? You want to do citizen by infrastructure development as well as capacity building programs. A large part of it has to come from the state and the central governments, and those efforts are being made. Plus also cities themselves will have to find some innovative ways of financing this. And plus I would also strongly argue for citizen user charges, because I think if you can provide good quality services, even if it's 50 rupees per service or 100 rupees per service, people will take that, because the harassment you have to go through, if you have to wait for 2 or 3 months, instead of that, if you can get a service done in 2 days or 4 hours or 2 hours or maybe 10 minutes at a cost, people will prefer it, because time is also money. So I think it has to be a mix of funding from a government as well as user charges. Chetan Vaidyaji, thank you for that comment. I thought it was a question and your name is there. So thanks for attending this call and being patient with my talk. Even in online services, there can be manipulation. Even without having vaccination doses, many people received. Yeah, so no system is foolproof. And that is the, constant gaming and innovation that you need to keep doing. And you cannot get into a paralysis saying, yaar, aisa hoga to hum kyun kare hi kyun? So, when people are very afraid of failure, they don't succeed because they don't do anything. फेलियर ही होना है तो करना क्यों है? आप सोचो करोड़ों लोगों में कहीं ना कहीं तो ये चीजें होंगी. So you have to rectify. You can't sit paralyzed. So you have to start small, succeed, see the problems, do the next level, see the problems, do the next level. It's continuous evolution. No system is set at any given point of time. Then Lovepreet, which seems to be Manpreet's relative. Sir, who to tackle the housing society
problems? Will become my relative with all Preets.
I think housing society problems, you look at, if you're talking about RWAs and all, they can have their own integrated systems within for citizens to interact with each other, elderly to interact with each other, children to interact with each other. There could be a problem solving app. I live in a society where there's a problem solving app, where if you have a problem related to a carpenter, you have a plumbing problem, and all, you can raise it, and the society has a system by which that problem is rectified. Things like that can be done. Can e-governance create threat in job opportunities in the future? I have probably talked about it. Each solution that you creates two different, problems and two different solutions as well. For example, you see Amazon came and Zomato came, and everyone thought restaurants will go away, but restaurants are still there. But there's maybe there is a dent there, but there is a big gig economy that has been created. Now, there is always going to be a plus, there is always going to be a minus. In certain areas where plus exceeds the minus, there will be job creation. In some areas where the plus will be less than the minus, jobs will go down. But on an average, you will see that one opportunity goes, other opportunity comes up, which is where it's not about job, it's about skill. And today, a person needs to have diversity of skills, need to keep retraining and training ourselves, so that if you lose one job because of some technology change, you're able to get another. So it's more important to now do multiple cycles of skilling. How to mitigate the problem? Multiple bylaws states have for, so urban is a state subject. It's not a problem if states have different laws, but it is a problem in the state you have multiple laws. That should be done away with. And also at the national level, we could see, that broadly where citizen services are concerned, laws can be simplified so that, people have universal access sort of across the country. Like, for example, what is being tried about in the ration card. So you have a ration card which is available to you across the country, and you can access ration. If you're a ration card holder in Indore, you can still access ration in, let's say, Belgaum or Bangalore. So I think I have been able to...
In Haryana, there are 4 agencies which are implementing building plan. One is ULB, Town Country Planning, Urban Development Authority. The 4 agencies are coming up on one platform now. So that's how they decided. So another example under NUDM we are seeing in Haryana, where they're kind of bringing it under one umbrella, all the bylaws under building placement. It's happening in one.
So I don't know how much justice I've been able to do to the questions, but I hope some justice at least.
No, so it was
Thank
wonderful.
you for having me on the call, and thank you, Manpreet. Kya bol rahe the aap?
So I was just saying it was a wonderful आपका पूरा experience. You could actually see those in those answers, and it was actually wonderful. Even I had spent almost 6 months with you, but in these 45 minutes, I could gauge the experience you have in urban and in overall e-governance. It was wonderful. The audience would have been enriched. Over to Mayuri. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Kunal sir and Manpreet, for such an informative session and patiently answering all the questions of our young participants. I know you had limited time, but thank you for staying back. And we hope our participants have enjoyed it as much and benefited from the same. So once again, thank you everyone for joining, and we shall see all our young participants in the semifinals tomorrow. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thanks.
Shafiq, you can close the...
Recording stopped.
Thanks, Shafiq.